I want to welcome all of you and wish you a very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you joining us from all around the world. And most of all, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for giving us an hour of your time today for this informational webinar for Columbia Business School Executive Education's upcoming online program, B2B Marketing Strategy. We are so thrilled to have all of you here with us today. We are so thrilled to have on the line with us today Sean Robinson, our amazing program leader for this program, and also the head of business development at Intuit. Sean, thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, how you doing, Mark? It's a pleasure to be here. And thanks everyone for joining. I'll just give a brief introduction. So my name is Sean Robinson and I'll be your program leader. I'm currently head of strategic business development at Intuit, focused on financials, first on fintech, so banking, lending, payments, etc. I've been here for 6 months. Prior to that, I was at American Express for 10 years in a variety of roles across product management, strategy, eventually M&A and alliances. I'm a graduate of Manchester Business School in the UK. So I lived in the UK for quite some time and London for quite some time. And I'm originally from Jamaica and I started my career in. So it's a pleasure to meet everyone. And I'm sure we'll get to know each other, hopefully on the course and during the office hours, which we'll talk a little bit more about later on.
Thank you so much, Sean. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being willing to take us through this amazing program that you are a part of. Thank you so much for joining us today. So before we actually get into going week by week, module by module, before I hand you over to Sean and he takes you through this incredible program that he is a part of, first, let's talk about the faculty of this program. Professor Miklos Sarvari, the Carson Family Professor of Business and the faculty lead for the Media and Technology program at Columbia Business School, is who you're going to be learning from in those recorded video lectures, the man who built this course. Professor Sarvari has a broad research agenda which focuses on media and information marketing. His most recent papers study ad blocking, online marketplace design, and content bundling on social media. But previously, he's also worked on user-generated content, online mobile advertising, and media and telecommunications competition. He is a member of the editorial boards of several academic journals, including Marketing Science, Quantitative Marketing and Economics, International Journal of Research and Marketing, and Journal of Interactive Marketing. Prior to joining Columbia, Professor Sarvari was the Deputy Dean for Executive Development Programs at INSEAD. And before joining INSEAD, Professor Sarvari was also a faculty member of the Harvard Business School and the Graduate School of Business at Stanford University. Separate from his academic work, Professor Sarvari has also taught executive courses and consulted in various parts of the world for large corporations, including IBM, Intel, Nokia, Samsung, and PricewaterhouseCoopers. Professor Sarvari is a true expert in this field and truly one of the best minds to be learning this kind of content, this kind of thought leadership from. And so we think you're going to learn a lot from him over the 6 weeks of this program. So why attend B2B marketing strategy online at Columbia Business School? In short, Columbia Business School is one of the best business schools in the world, priding itself on its excellent faculty like Professor Sarvari, who provide its students with superior knowledge and thought leadership across divisions and disciplines. Columbia Business School has been enriching the lives of its students for over 100 years, established in 1916 to provide business training and professional preparation for both graduate and undergraduate students at Columbia University. Columbia Business School is the only Ivy League business school that is located in the global business hub of New York City. Columbia Business School has almost 50,000 alumni all over the world in 123 different countries. And Columbia Business School, of course, is a part of the famed Ivy League Columbia University, which itself has produced 85 Nobel Prize winners, multiple presidents and justices of the United States Supreme Court, over 24 Oscar winners, and Columbia University is also one of only 9 colleges in the United States that are older than the United States itself. So in short, Columbia Business School is simply one of the best business schools in the world. And so we hope that you will become part of the larger, wider, global Columbia family by taking this program through Columbia Business School Executive Education. Now, who is this program for? Well, if you're on this call today, then we are pretty confident that this program is for you. But the B2B Marketing Strategy online program is ideal for mid to senior level marketing or business unit managers. So listen to these descriptions, and if any of these sound like you, then you are in the right place and you are who we built this program for. So if you are a manager from a technical or manufacturing background and you are now responsible for growth or marketing driven functions, then this program is for you. If you're a product manager and a marketing lead and you're transitioning from a consumer domain into a B2B environment, then this program is for you. If you're an account manager and you're seeking to make better customer relationship decisions specific to B2B marketing, then this program is for you. Or if you are an experienced and newly promoted product or business unit manager with technical expertise, but a limited marketing background, then this program is for you. Some of the representative roles and titles that you might have that this could fall under, if you have a title like sales director, head of business development, head of marketing, industrial sales lead, key account manager, relationship manager, product manager, growth product manager, just a few of the titles. If any of these sound like either your present or your future career, if this is also a goal for you, if you're about to be in this place and you're working towards being in one of these roles and one of these job titles, then this program is ideally suited for you. So with that, it is my pleasure to hand things over to Sean, who is going to take us week by week, tell you about what you're going to learn, what you can expect out of this program. So Sean, take it away.
Once again, guys, happy to have you guys here. I will be taking you through the program specifics. What I want to take you through in the next couple of minutes are, first and foremost, an overview of our learning objectives for the course. I'll go through a summary of all the modules that you'd be learning in the course, as well as a summary of the various assignments and case studies and a discussion on how the course is delivered. And I'll spend a little bit of time talking about the office hours that I host personally, and I opinion will be that is perhaps one of the most valuable areas of the course, because you get an opportunity not only to discuss topics with myself, but with each other, and we get to spend a lot of time with each other in the office. So I'll get there. So if we move on to the next slide, the program overview. So what are we trying to accomplish here? So first and foremost, the program is organized into 6 modules, and they're aimed at helping you to create and evaluate your brands and your value proposition, as Mark just articulated. For those of you who are coming either from a B2C type of environment or have never really been in marketing before or don't have experience there, what you find is while B2C can be quite intuitive, we're all consumers and we all know how messages resonate with us, etc. B2B can be fundamentally very different. And so we'll talk a little bit about how is it different, why is it different, and understanding how B2B organizations make decisions and how you should position yourselves accordingly. We'll talk a little bit about the economics of marketing. So we talk a little bit about budgeting, pricing, and how to capture value, etc. We'll discuss different distribution models, right? So some of you may rely on distributors, some of you have proprietary distribution strategies, some of you folks are trying to enter new markets, etc. So we'll discuss cases and examples of how to do that. And all of this, and also we'll talk a little bit about sales teams. Again, in B2B, traditionally, sales teams and account development teams have been key in selling in products and services, but that in itself requires a lot of thought and its own strategy. So we'll go there. And ultimately, what this is all leading us to is how do we create a sustainable competitive advantage through marketing strategy? And that's ultimately what that's the ultimate question that we're trying to answer on the course. And that's in week 6. For the next couple of slides, I'm just going to go give a brief summary of what each of the 6 modules are all about, starting from module 1. For module 1, it's about B2B brands and your value proposition. Again, many of you are interested in this course because your perception of value proposition is based on B2B, and we recognize that B2C, and you recognize that B2B is fundamentally very different. So we'll be discussing the elements of B2B value proposition. We'll be creating and challenging a variety of B2B value propositions. And ultimately here, what we're trying to ensure is that they're compelling, they're differentiated, and not lastly, but something that I want to highlight, that they're consistent across your organizations. Many organizations struggle with creating a value proposition that obviously have the product management or the strategy team that is trying to create a value proposition, but then it goes into our sales teams or our marketing teams or what have you. And sometimes the message can be very blurry. Sometimes if you have large sales teams, the story that they're telling, to organizations can vary by people. Or even worse, sometimes there's a story that a salesperson or whoever you're communicating to can be too consistent across different stakeholders within an organization, which can actually be very ineffective. So we'll go through that and ensure that our value propositions are targeted, compelling, and differentiated. Moving on to module 2. Again, we recognize that B2C and B2B decision making is very different. So we'll deep dive into that. We'll talk a lot about that. Starting off in B2C, I'm sure many of you have been walking around in a mall or a plaza and have made an impulsive purchase. You wanted to buy a pair of your shoes or an outfit or something along those lines. In B2B, that's far less likely to happen, right? They're very rarely emotional decisions. They're all practical decisions with strict cost and value articulation required in order to approve such purchases. There's often a very strict process, especially for strategic purchases by customers. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with RFP processes, competitive bidding situations. And so we'll get into that because those in themselves require a strategy. And lastly, multiple stakeholders with different incentives and goals are often involved in the decision-making process. So you may have, if you're selling into a large organization, you may have a sponsor of whatever it is that you're selling into. You may have the actual user of the product. You may have a procurement department that's not using the product, but they're paying for the product. You may have a finance department that may not necessarily be paying for the product directly, but is very interested in the economics of the product and ensuring that certain KPIs are hit. So then how do you ensure that you're getting buy-in from all these different stakeholders and ensuring that you're actually targeting decision makers across this project, so across your sales? Again, we'll be discussing strategies and tactics to ensure that you're effectively navigating the B2B organization and effectively influencing decisions as well. Moving on to module 3, this is more focused on a go-to-market strategy. So again, as I touched on earlier, some of you are leveraging proprietary channels, some of you guys are leveraging distributors, and so we'll talk a little bit there about the trade-offs of doing that. To what extent do you want to maintain relationships with end users for those of you who are not selling directly to the end users of your products? How do you do that? What are some of the challenges in doing that? So we'll really get into that. We'll also talk about breaking into new markets, especially international markets. Many of you folks are from international markets and are working at international companies and are looking to break into new markets. And it can be very challenging across cultures, across language barriers to do that effectively. So we'll talk a lot about that as well. But we'll also talk about helping your customers sell into their customers. A great example that I always use, because one of my favorite companies especially as an example for this course, is Home Depot. I'm sure many of you guys, if you're familiar with Home Depot, you may go there and you may have folks from Home Depot suppliers actually on the floor doing either cooking classes using the products and services that they're trying to sell you. So demonstrating how you might use that, having different kind of workshops to help do-it-yourselfers or even contractors see the value of their products. And so that's a really good tool. And we'll talk a little bit more about other tactics, but that's just an example of how being valuable to your customer may mean actually embedding yourself with them and helping them to sell your product to end customers. So we'll talk a lot about those types of things in strategy. In module 4, we'll talk about product strategies. Here we shall talk about understanding how to identify opportunities for product differentiation. In this module, we shall learn how to plot and analyze industry value curves and leverage the results. Also, we'll learn how to write a positioning statement for an organization. We shall explore different ways to achieve value innovation in an organization. Moving on to module 5, we'll be focused on pricing. So how do you effectively, module one was about value proposition. So pricing is how you capture the value that you generated to customers through your value proposition. So how do you appropriately tie your value proposition to your pricing strategy? We'll talk about how to appropriately set prices in a competitive environment. So many organizations, and I'm sure this may resonate with many of you, you want to charge X, but your competitors are charging Y. So you kind of default to Y in fear of being perhaps too expensive or not being seen as competitive in the market. Some folks are relatively new businesses and are thinking through, well, how do I set prices? Do I just take my costs and add 20%, or is there a more strategic way of thinking through that? So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about using different pricing tools, so discounts and bundling, etc., to more appropriately capture the value of your products and services. And then obviously we'll talk a little bit about common pricing challenges and how we might approach them. So that's what module 5 is about. And then moving on to module 6 is about bringing it all together. So how do we effectively combine our value proposition, our product positioning, our pricing, our distribution strategy, our sales teams, and bring it all together to create a sustainable competitive advantage. We'll also be talking through how other companies might have done it, evaluating their competitive advantages, what are the different components of it, where do they have incredible strength, where they may have weaknesses. And we'll also discuss how we, if we were competitors, might not only create our own areas of sustainable competitive advantages, but if we had to tackle a market leader who seemed to have a strong moat, what are the strategies that we might employ to take on companies that have strong competitive advantages and value propositions that resonate. So I'll pause there. That is what we'll be covering on the course. For the next couple slides, I'm going to talk through two things. One, just more tactically about the course. How is it delivered? What are how are you graded? What are the assignments, etc. And then I'll also be talking through a couple of the case studies. So so application exercises here. What this really ultimately means is we have a variety of ways in ensuring that you're getting value from the course, and there are a variety of exercises that we have to ensure that you're testing your knowledge, but you also have an opportunity to learn from not just the professor, not just some case studies and examples, but to learn from me, and most importantly, to learn from each other, right? So each of the modules has a series of case studies that you'll go through. The case studies will be available on the dashboard. You read them. There'll be specific questions around the case studies, and the professor will ultimately take you through how he would tackle the case study. That's usually very insightful, because as Mark outlined earlier, our professor is very experienced in this and has really clever ways of evaluating, breaking down case studies, which you learn from. There'll be quizzes that you'll be taking in order to take grades that will be graded and contribute ultimately to your final grade. There'll also be discussion topics and online submissions. So each module will have a series of try it activities and different kind of questions that are floated to the group. And as part of doing that assignment, you'll be posting your responses and responding to other people's responses, and therefore facilitating a discussion around a particular marketing strategy challenge and learning from each other. And then lastly, every week for an hour, there'll be an office hour. Recognizing that there are many time zones and different folks have different schedules, it's not mandatory, but I strongly encourage you guys to join the office hours. Typically, we have a great group of folks join. The discussion is very rich. We talk through the cases, we talk through the questions, we get into a little debates about how to handle different situations. Folks who are perhaps in the industries where the case studies are addressing, or in the industries that were highlighted in a particular week, will give their perspective, and folks who are in the same industry can share knowledge with each other. So it's a great opportunity to learn from each other, learn from me, to have a really rich discussion for an hour each week. So I encourage everyone to join. And then lastly, I just want to touch on some of the case studies that will be available on the course. So I'm not going to go into each and every one of them, but they ultimately here they're from a variety of different industries. So we have financial services, consulting, we have shipping, we have healthcare services. Some of these companies were very large, and this is not an exhaustive list, but some of these companies were very large. Some of these companies were much smaller, and the challenges that they faced, and this is across times as well, time eras as well. Some of the challenges that they faced were quite unique. And so each week we'll be going through at least one of these case studies, and you'll be able to apply a lot of the learnings that you would have taken on board through the professor, the cases, sorry, the professor and the quizzes, the triad activities and discussions with me, and applying it to each one of these very cool case studies. So with that, Mark, I'm gonna pause and hand it back to you, and we'll go from there.
Let me tell you a little bit about how you will learn the program highlights that actually Sean already touched on a lot of these even better than I could, but just a few of the program highlights that we have here. Sean talked about the live office hours with him, with our program leader, and also he alluded to those moderated discussion boards where our students are able to discuss what is being learned and also learn from each other. You might be learning alongside someone in the exact same industry as you who is on the other side of the world, and at the same time learning from someone who's in a completely different industry from you, but they're right down the street. And so they're familiar with the business environment, the regulations, the laws going on that affect your business also affect theirs. So that kind of dynamic, diverse representation among your cohort, we bring that into the program so that you can benefit from the global diversity, industrial diversity of work experience. Again, this is for mid to senior level managers. So that means you'll be learning alongside some people with 10 years experience, some people with 15, and some with over 25 years of experience all at the same time. And you'll all be able to bring that experience into the program. We talked about the case studies, the real world application exercises. I just talked about how it was cohort based, but I want to talk a little bit about those on-demand video lectures. So those video lectures that Professor Sarvari have made for you, those are presented in what we call bite-sized learning. So we understand that everyone's schedules are different, that we all lead busy lives, and our students devote 4 to 6 hours per week on this program. That is not an average, that is the range. So when I say 4 to 6 hours per week, I don't mean some students it's 2 hours, some students it's 10 hours. 4 to 6 hours per week is the range that our students invest in this program. But we understand that in a traditional academic environment, if I told you a program or a class was 4 to 6 hours per week, that would probably mean 2 or 3 hours at a time, 2 or 3 times a week. But obviously the whole benefit of online learning is to be able to do it whenever it fits into your schedule. So we've broken down those video lectures. Some of them are 3 minutes, some of them are 5 minutes, so that even if you only have 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there, you can advance your learning in whatever amount of free time you have. The example that I like to give is, say you are going back into the office, say you commute by train and you have a half-hour commute each way. You can listen to 4, 5, or 6 videos on the way to work, listen to 4, 5, or 6 videos on the way home from work, and you will find that you will be able to accomplish much of that 4 to 6 hours per week just while you're commuting. So we've broken that down for that reason into what we call bite-sized learning, so that wherever you can find 5 minutes, wherever you can find 10 minutes, you can invest that time in your learning. Now, upon successful completion of the program, participants will receive a verified digital certificate of participation from Columbia Business School Executive Education, and also 2 credits towards a certificate in business excellence with Columbia Business School Executive Education. And this is a fantastic feather in your cap. A lot of our students find this really enriching, that you can put on your LinkedIn, your CV, your resume. It's great in interviews. You never know who else might have taken one of Columbia Business School Executive Education's online programs. You might find that they're right on the other side of the table during that interview, and you'll find that you have a common language, a vernacular with them. But also, this is a great way to be able to find, like on LinkedIn or on social media, to find past members of cohorts and also future classmates as well. So you'll find that there are people who've taken this program in the past, people who, and then a couple of years from now, there will be more people who have taken this program, and you'll never know what connections you'll be able to make using this verified digital certificate of participation as a conduit for that. So this is a really just great little bonus. Obviously, we're all here for the learning, for the thought content. But this is a fantastic feather in your cap that really can also give a little boost to your career as well. So with that, program support has put up in the chat box a link that you can click on to register for this program. As you can see there, a 6-week online program, investing 4 to 6 hours per week in the program. But you can see by that program fee, that shakes out to less than $450 per week. That is a fantastic value, a fantastic investment to make in your future, in your firm's future. So please go ahead, open up that chat box, click on that link, and register for this program. My wife works in government. So when you were talking about RFPs in module 2, that was a light bulb that went off. That's a phrase that I've heard many times. One of the things that we cover in this program is the fact that B2B is different than B2C, but within those different businesses that you can sell to, do we go over the nuances of working with B2B? Because when you said RFP, I was like, oh, that's government. Like I assume government's completely different than selling to different corporations. So do we go into all the different nuances of the different businesses that are covered by B2B?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. As you learn on the course, RFP processes are not limited to just government. They could be leveraged anytime any business wants to acquire a new service, especially if it is very technical. They'll often invite many different solution providers to come in, not only pitch their service, but answer whether it be integration, products and benefits, economics, all that kind of stuff. Because in many instances, as we talk about on the course, solutions are customized for the end user, as opposed to in B2C, where, if you're buying an iPhone, you're in all likelihood purchasing the same iPhone that everybody else also has. So RFP processes are very helpful for instances where you have to ask lots of detailed questions. So you talked about government, highly regulated industries where you have to be very precise about how you're delivering a product or service. Those can be very, very useful. And yes, we'll talk about the different contexts under which they emerge. We'll have many examples, and what we find, and I want to just give a plug for the office. So what we find is that folks come in and talk about experiences they've had being a part of the RFP process as one of the competing bidders, but also being part of RFP processes as a person who's issued the RFP. And what are some of the things that help your response to stand out? How do you tackle RFP situations where maybe you're given, and I'm getting tactical here, but maybe you're given a template to fill out, but your value proposition is unique and differentiated, and you don't want to answer it in a templated way. So how do you leverage that? How do you leverage relationships across the organization to ensure that you might actually sneak into helping design the RFP, influencing some of the questions that are asked, or being able to communicate value above and beyond the RFP process, obviously while respecting the rules. So yes, we'll talk about RFPs, the different contexts that they exist in, and how you might be able to differentiate yourself.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what's covered on pricing and on B2B digital marketing?
Yeah, fantastic. Pricing, we can talk a little bit more about that. As I mentioned, pricing is how organizations capture value. So we'll be evaluating the different pricing levers that you have available to you. And this one is very interesting because, again, going back to the office hours, and I think going into the other question that you have here, every organization is different, right? So every organization has different pricing levels and has different pricing carriers. For example, if you're selling a software, you may charge one price as a price carrier for just your software. Like I'm Intuit, QuickBooks, we charge one price for QuickBooks, for example. Or if you're an American Express card member, you may pay one fee for your card as a small business. But there are also many different ways to either break that down and have multiple different price carriers, or thinking through if you provide a more complex solution, understanding where you have appropriate leverage and can differentiate yourself and ensure that, one, maybe it's a little bit tougher to compare your price or competitors' price apples to apples, which can give you a little bit of advantage if you're trying to charge, for example, a premium. How you might bundle services and solutions if you're trying to either introduce a new product and service, or you've determined that there's an element of your product and service that, or especially your service, that has tremendous perceived value, even though it almost costs you nothing to replicate or sell to the customer. So how do you ensure that you're pricing for that and monetizing that most effectively? The pricing discussion can get very deep because there's so much to discuss around our own pricing. And so I hope that does answer your question around some of the other things that we talk about pricing. One of the things that I like to include here, especially in the office hours, is just how do we ensure that we're focused on charging a premium? Many folks struggle with, I want to sell my widget for X. My competitor sells it at X minus 10%. And so now I'm now forced to sell it at X minus 10%. And that normally comes down to a failure of creating a differentiated value proposition, a failure in distribution strategy and or sales strategy and or sales incentives. So we'll get through all of that because they're all interlinked. And this is coming from the perspective of someone, again, I was at American Express for 10 years, and I was actually director of pricing strategy for a while, and we were obsessed with not reducing prices, but increasing prices. And as you guys can imagine, if you think about a small business platinum credit card, for example, I think 10 years ago it was $300 for one card, and now it's probably $650 for one card. So over time, we have increased price. So how have we been able to do that? We've been able to effectively tie price with value. And so we'll talk through how to do a little bit more of that as well. And then with the digital B2B digital marketing, I think one of the things that many organizations have struggled with is just one, like, especially on the social media side, like how is social media relevant for my B2B organization? We'll go through a couple cases that touch on that and how you can actually establish a digital brand and pair it with again, your sales force and your more traditional sales channels, and how they can actually work together to ensure that you're closing business and positioning your brand and selling products and services to your end customer. So I'll pause there because it's a long answer to what was a very short question, but hopefully that provides a little bit more context.
Sean, it was an excellent answer to an excellent question. That's what that was. Thank you so much for going through that, Sean. I really appreciate it. First, what I want to throw to you, Sean, is will there be a live engagement session with other students? I feel like the answer is not specifically, but those online office hours are a chance where you're all together, right?
Yeah, so there are a couple of ways to engage with other students. Again, as I mentioned, the office hour is perhaps the best way because we all get in a format like this. We're all speaking to each other rather than typing questions into a chat box or what have you. We have everyone talking to each other. I might pose for each one of the modules. I typically come with a summary and overview, a perspective on what was taught. Sometimes I disagree with the professor and I'll say why, and I'll have you guys challenge me and challenge the professor and challenge each other. Many folks give really good examples of situations that they've been in and how they've addressed that situation. Someone looking at this B2B digital marketing, we had someone who was an SEO expert give everyone a very deep dive on how they've been able to optimize their digital channels for their it wasn't a small business, but a medium-sized business. And to the extent that this is a course for everyone, sometimes the topics have to be general enough to resonate with everyone, but the office hours is where you have folks get really detailed and specific and deep dive in very niche areas. We've had last module, we had two folks who were in oil and gas, which was actually quite unusual, and they spent quite a lot of time discussing how they can effectively either work together or different strategies they've employed to ensure that they're effective in their respective industry. So the question is live engagement sessions with other students. Office was fantastic, but then as you mentioned, Mark, there are the discussion boards, and the discussion boards are also very helpful. Those ones are especially helpful, as you mentioned, Mark, because you could participate in them at your leisure. Meaning, if you're commuting, if you're on the go, if you have a few minutes at home, if you decided to do your assignment on a Sunday or whatever it is, you can hop into the discussion board, submit your answers, participate in a discussion, and get responses back from other students. They're normally very active, and because it is part of how you are evaluated on this course, the discussions tend to be very rich and there's a lot of participation there. So there's no shortage of opportunities to engage with your other students, but the office hours and the discussion boards are the two primary ways.
We cover B2B on e-commerce business in this program.
So there isn't a case specifically on e-commerce businesses, but again, In an instance like this where you want to discuss a very specific vertical, again, hop on the office hour and you and I can discuss that together. And I can give a variety of examples of things I've seen work and not work. Again, just to recap my background, as part of our M&A team, American Express, I had a lot of exposure to a variety of businesses across a multitude of industries. We used to work very closely as well with our venture capital arm. And so I've met with many CEOs and have had exactly these types of discussions around building brand, effective marketing, creating scale. I've seen things that have worked incredibly well. I've seen things that have crashed and burned and failed. And so the office hours are a great opportunity to extract a lot of some of the more niche questions or answers to solutions that are not covered explicitly on the course.
Will the course cover the subject of ways of measuring the market size and market share?
Not specifically, but again, that's something that we could discuss.
Is this course in cooperation with Emeritus or other institutions, Sean?
So this is a Columbia Business School course. Emeritus is intermediary that helps to facilitate the course, but ultimately the professor is from Columbia Business School. This is a Columbia Business School course, so I think maybe that the existence of Emeritus here is providing a little bit of confusion, but this is a Columbia Business School course.
Are there any other final thoughts, final insights, things about the course that we haven't covered yet? Anything that you want to add before I let everybody go?
One of the things that we didn't talk about perhaps is just the experience as a student and the importance of the networking benefit of taking this course. Typically, the students in the course form, and this is more informal, but they form WhatsApp groups, they form LinkedIn groups, they network with each other. I had a student about a year ago who worked for an organization that could be a potential partner for the organization I was at the time. And so we were able to do some business together. And so I think there's a lot of practicality. There's lots of practical ways that this course can benefit you, not just learning, but you're meeting like-minded folks from all across the world. And you'd be surprised at how that could be beneficial in a variety of ways.
Thank you so much for that, Sean. Generating leads, are lead generations using digital tools part of the curriculum for the 6-week course?
Yeah, so we talk about lead gen when it comes to go-to-market and distribution. And so we'll have a module specifically around that.
If you have any additional questions also, if in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour from now, 2 days from now, if you have any additional questions whatsoever, you can send them at any time to Columbia@emeritus.org. Again, that's the Columbia with a U, Columbia@emeritus.org. I want to thank Sean Robinson, our amazing rockstar program leader, so much for his time and his dedication and his brilliance today. Sean, thank you so much for being on the line with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark, and take care.
And also, I want to thank all of you. Thank you so much, our future students, all you participants who joined us today. Thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time. We know that your time is precious. Again, if you have any additional questions for us, you can send them at any time to Columbia@emeritus.org. Until then, thank you all so much for joining us today. Have a beautiful day, and we look forward to having you in the program. Bye-bye for now, everybody.
Take care, everyone.